The Book of the Dead is an illustrated group of spells that the Egyptians called the Book Exodus in the daytime. It is basically a personal roll of papyrus engraved, which was placed in the tombs of ordinary people during the modern state. And the Book of the Dead is not an actual text but rather an idea, and some spells for the declarations of innocence from sins and the trial of the dead, while others for consumption, some of which could be obtained in many forms, and the length and quality of the text differ according to the material capacity of the deceased and his initial desire. Some of the texts of the Book of the Dead are completely new, while there are other texts that refer to the text of the coffins, but rather the text of the pyramids from the era of an old state. The basic principle of these spells is the sole purpose of confirming magic in preserving the life of the deceased while on the journey of eternity and during and within the limits of it. And from this text, the modern scholars have been able to understand the hopes and fears that the ordinary Egyptian was facing about eternity. And this text appeared in the Valley of the Kings at the end 19th dynasty. Bennu is an ancient Egyptian deity linked with the sun creation and rebirth. It may have been the inspiration for the phoenix in Greek mythology, and the most important symbol of death and rebirth. According to the Egyptian mythology, the Bennu was a self-created being said to have played a role in creations of the world. It was said to be the Ba of Ra and enabled the creative actions of Atom. It was said to have flown over the waters of none that existed before creations, landing on a rock and issuing a call that determined the nature of creation. It was also a symbol of rebirth and was therefore associated with Osiris. Some of the titles of the Bennu birds were He Who Came into Being by Himself and the Lord of Jubilees. The latter epithet referred to the belief that the Bennu periodically rewound itself like the sun. Its name is related to the Egyptian verb weaven, meaning to rise in a brilliance or to shine. The pyramid text referred to the yellow wagtail as a symbol of Atom, and it may have been the original form of the Bennu bird. New Kingdom artwork shows the Bennu as a grey heron with a long beak and a two-feathered crest, sometimes referred on a Benben stone representing Ra, or in a willow tree representing Osiris. Because of its connection with Osiris, it sometimes wears the Attic crown. Like Atom and Ra. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing about Egypt in the 5th century before Christ, wrote that the people of Heliopolis described the phoenix to him. They said it lived for 500 years before dying, resuscitating, building a funerary egg with mirth for the paternal corpse, and carrying into the temple of the sun at Heliopolis. Mon, whose name means hidden one, was commonly depicted as a bearded man in the prime of manhood, strong, virile, and vigorous, wearing a headdress adorned with two tall plumes. Unlike other Egyptian gods, Amun wasn't thought of as living in some parasitical celestial abode. Rather, his presence was ubiquitous, existing in all places and in all things, yet unseen beyond the perception of God and moral alike. Because of this, Amun was often linked to the wind. Felt by everyone, seen by no one. An interesting aspect of Egyptian mythology is that there was a multitude of creations of the universe. There were many different versions, so the result varied, producing either the primeval mount, the primeval lotus, the islands of flame, or cosmic egg. Another of Amun's primeval incarnation was the cosmic ghost, known as the Great Shaker, whose booming honk broke the silence, bringing the first sound into existence. In some accounts, the primeval ghost led the world egg. In others, Amun fertilized the world egg while his ram-headed serpent from cold. In the beginning, there was nothing. The universe consisted of a great chaotic ocean, and then emerged amid this primal chaos. Then was a huge pyramid mound. There was a lotus flower with Ben, and this, when it blossoms, brought the God rose to the world, and light came with him. Ra by himself generated the first generations of gods. Shu, the son of the air, and Tefnut, the goddess of the rain, were born. The universe was enwrapped by a vast mass of primordial waters. Shu and Tefnut plunged into the waters to explore its immensity. Ra felt afflicted after realizing that their children were taking a long time to return, and fearing never seeing them again. He sent his best messenger to find them. Shu and Tefnut returned safe and sound, and Ra's joy was so immense that human beings were born from his tears. After turning, their children generated in turn gave the god of the earth, and not the goddess of the sky. And thus, the sky and the earth were created. The great god Ra sovereignly ruled the universe power, and he was awarded the title of the first pharaoh. The god gifted Egypt with several sacred animals like the ox and the lion, but his greatest offering was the creations of the Nile River. Around its shores, men would defy a civilization glorifying the gods. But Ra had a premonitions that his grandchildren would give birth to a new generations of gods who had put an end to his reign. And so the great god forbade the sky and the earth to have of any offspring whatsoever but Nut, and disobeyed and gave rise to a powerful offspring, Isis, Nelt, Set, and Osiris. The throne drew, and Osiris started to reign over the world. But the new god's throne was not safe, because his brother Set was eager to take all power for him. Sel, and so the saga of Egyptian gods began after disposing the god of Ra, the deity who gave origin to the Egyptian world. Osiris became the new god of the universe. The new supreme god took the goddess Isis as his wife and started prosperity. Set, the god of destruction, had murdered Osiris, the god who reigned supreme in Egyptian mythology. Set took the throne from his brother for himself and unleashed his reign of terror. Nevertheless, Osiris had generated there together with the goddess Isis. His name was Horus. This was a falcon god whose prophecy said that he would reign over the skies and would bring the light back to the Egypt, ending the darkness brought by Set. Horus, already an adult, decided to claim his throne, which had been usurped by his uncle. The contention is judged by the gods, while the court presided over by the sun. God Rome decided who would be worthy to sit on the throne. A series of clashes between Santa and Horus had begun. Set had rose sympathy since usurper protected the sun god from the serpent of puppets, while the latter crossed the skies. Set proposed a challenge to Horus. Both would have to transform themselves into hippos and should be submerged for 3 months. Horus relied on his mother, the goddess Isis, to take advantage of Set's vulnerability to kill him. The goddess felt sympathy percent and could not kill him. His betrayal enraged Horus, who then attacked his mother, cutting off her head, and the god Thoth, the deity of knowledge, severed the goddess, replacing the severed head with a cow's head. The clash between Set and Horus continued for many years. When fighting in the desert, Set managed to pluck Horus' eyes. Due to hot ores helped the goddess of love. Horus had his vision restored. The court of gods demanded a reconciliation between Santa and Horus. The evil god, pretending to be benevolent, invited Horus for a feast in his palace. During the night, Set tried to abuse his nephew, making him unworthy to the throne. However, Horus managed to defend himself and prevented the god's poisonous seed. Horus decided to take revenge, and with the help of the goddess Isis, the god placed his divine seed and lettuce leaves, which were offered to Set by the goddess Isis, the god of barren. Desert ate contaminated lettuce poison. Set started to deteriorate in front of everyone, and golden dust emerged in his forehead through grub, and bright dust ingrained it in hair on his head. Set had been humiliated, and that was when, after 80 years, the court granted Horus the throne and right. Isis could be more proud to see her son, with Osiris assuming the father of throne. Set's fate was trouble with Rome, the sun gods of the sky, and his enraged screams to be heard with thunder. And so Horus's reign over Egypt began, and all the pharaohs who won the reign over Egypt were among his descendants. Ra is the son of God in Egyptian mythology. This god is usually depicted as being with a man's body and a head of a falcon. The sun disk is over his head. He had been him and down, finding himself too old, he decided to relinquish the power of go to the sky. This god is one of the most revered figures in Egyptian mythology. As the sun god, one of his duties was to drive away the darkness and to accomplish his work. The god crossed the sky on his sun, both lighting the whole world. But when the twilight came, he and his vessel plunged into the sea waters towards the underworld. There he would have to sail through the dark world and cross the 12 gates, which would be 12 regions of the netherworld. Ra took an hour to go through each gate. Osiris was in one of them, the lord of the underworld, whom Ra always visited to pay his respect. But before leaving the underworld's darkness, the god was attacked by the terrible snake Apopis. This force of chaos tried to destroy the god's vessel, and each day the serpent seems closer to accomplish her desire. Apopis once managed to swallow the boat, putting an end to the sunlight in the morning, but the serpent failed to hold the god in her stomach and regretted him his event. This was remarked as a solar eclipse, however, destroying Ra. After losing the dispute of the supreme throne for Horus, he had been recommended to navigate with Ra across the sky. He helped the sun god defending his vessel against the terrible serpent, defeating it several times, making Ra underworld journey safer. The god Ra was a figure worshipped throughout Egypt, but this god was especially adored in the city of Heliopolis. The god prestige was so vast other traditional Egyptian religions of antiquity merged the gods' depictions along the greatest figure of their own pantheons. For instance, the figures of the supreme gods Amun and Atum were also known as Amun-Ra and Atum-Ra. The god's name was used by many pharaohs. Ramses, as well known as example, this name means son of Ra.
That was the beginning of the world by Egyptian mythology. Ancient Egyptians believed that the basic principles of life, natures, and society were determined by the gods at the creations of the world. This story describes how the earth was created out of chaos by the god Atum. The earth was seen as a secret landscape, a reflection of the sky, world where the gods resided. The creations of the myth. The first god, the mythical Pinyu bird, the sons of God's eye, the rebellion, and the Ra journey.